And remember, it's always the responsibility of the sender, not the receiver, for effective communication. Good day, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Monday Morning Moments with Mark. Hope this finds you well. As you saw in the open this week, we're going to talk a little bit about communication and how effective communication can help lower our stress level. But before we get into that, of course, we have to have the funniest thing. And the funniest thing this week is courtesy of my wonderful wife, Valerie, and a comment she made while we were at dinner the other day. So, a little bit of background. I'm in the process of conducting a study for one of my master's classes, and one of the questions involves identifying the 5 signs of emotional suffering. So, we're at dinner, and she takes the survey, and I asked her if she got the question right, and she goes, "Yeah, I know how to identify emotional suffering." And I said, and she explains how she did it. And I said, "Oh, is that because I'm always talking about these things around the house?" And she goes, "No, it's because I pay attention in church." And I said, let me get this straight. You can identify emotional suffering because you pay attention in church? She goes, to the sermons, to the sermons. Our pastor had talked about signs of depression in one of the previous sermons. That's what she meant. But the way it came across is definitely she understands emotional suffering because she pays attention in church. So that's the funniest thing that happened this week. That was an example of how ineffective communication. It was funny and not necessarily stressful, but the misunderstanding of the meaning of the words there. So some of the problems we have when we talk about communication, and I honestly believe that breakdowns in communication is one of the number one causes of points of stress and conflict, and the inability to communicate ourselves effectively actually causes stress in a situation. And if you don't believe me, there's 2 groups of people you can ask: a 3-year-old and a 13-year-old. They want nothing more in this world to be able to be understood and heard, and their lack of ability to effectively communicate those desires sometimes can cause a lot of stress and tension. But it's not just those 2 groups, it happens to us as adults as well. And I, I had to actually stop the other day. I was trying to explain a concept to my wife, and I sighed and I said, that sigh is because of my inability to convey my thoughts, not because I'm frustrated with you not understanding me. Let me try and reframe this. So, effective communication is always the responsibility of the sender, not the receiver. Even though it might be the receiver's fault that they don't understand, it is never their responsibility to understand your message. And what I mean by that is there's a couple things I'm going to go over to outline some ways to help our communication skills, as well as understanding that when you are the one, the communicator, it's your responsibility to check off all these things to make sure your message is coming across effectively. The first one is really are they in a position or in the right frame of mind to receive? Are they ready to receive whatever you're trying to communicate to them? An example of that is kids telling stories to their parents. They just start talking. They do not care whether or not you are in an attentive state of mind or anything. And I'm reminded of like the classic example of like a mom just trying to go to the bathroom for a minute and catch peace, and the kid just comes in there and starts telling her about like all this day. Like, I'm not in a position to listen to you right now, but you kind of have to. So, is the receiver ready to listen to whatever message you have and make sure that they are in fact attentive to what you're saying? Because if you just start talking and nobody's listening, your message is not going to be received. The next thing I want to talk about is verbiage. Words have meaning. I've said this for a very long time. Um, as a linguist and studier and teacher of languages, the words have meaning. And I had my own example of this yesterday. My wife and I are going to stop and get something to eat, and she doesn't know that the other parking spaces are reserved for curbside pickup, but I know because I've been to this place. So I'm telling her, I'm like, park right there, and she's like, where the hell's there? And I'm like, I'm pointing, but my frame of reference and her frame of reference were not the same. So specificity in what you're trying to say and the particular verbiage that you use is very important. So from now on, I have to give my wife directions using cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. The second thing I want to talk about is syntax. So the order of the words can actually change the meaning of the words if you put them in a different way. This is actually very true and something we have to teach in Spanish is like the way if you put the adjective in front of the noun or whatever, can actually change the whole meaning of it. And syntax, I'm telling you, the word order of things is why it takes me 30 minutes to write a 2-paragraph email, because I'm constantly reviewing and like, what do these words mean in this flow? The third thing that I want to talk about with effective communication, and keep in mind, I'm just talking about 4 simple ones. There's whole, obviously, courses, and you could go into all the different elements of communication, but these are 4 of the most basic ones I found. And the last one could be one of the most important, and that's tone and inflection. First of all, tone and inflection can be conveyed through syntax in written communications. However, sentiment is never conveyed through written communication. So we can only convey sentiment through our tone and inflection that people hear and see in our body language and our voice and the way we speak. So just keep that in mind, that sentiment is never conveyed in written communication. And a lot of times tone and inflection isn't either. So, as my mom used to always say, when it comes to tone and inflection, it's not always what you say, it's how you say it. So, the four basic elements that I wanted to talk about today for helping improve our communication, which will definitely lower your stress level, is making sure that they're ready to receive your message, understanding the verbiage that you choose and your words have meaning, what order you put those words in and whether or not it changes the meaning, and then how's your delivery, your tone and inflection in the delivery. So I hope that was helpful, and take some time this week to just be cognizant, be mindful of the words that you're choosing and the way that you're communicating with people, and I hope you'll see a significant reduction in your stress by being able to effectively communicate with others. And remember, always the responsibility of the sender, not the receiver, for effective communication. Thanks and have a great week.